My name is Susan Scherf. I'm an educator here at the Institute for American Indian Studies, here today to talk about the Three Sisters Garden. Prior to gardening, Native Americans would have had to have migrated from place to place to get different resources, like an acorn, which again provided tons of nutrients, but the calories expended to collect those resources would have been a ton. About 1,200 years ago, gardening came in from Central and South America and moved its way up here into New England. We wouldn't have had a fence like this. This is a modern fence to keep our deer out, but they would have established a Three Sisters Garden. Again, a lot of the forest would have been cut down to use those resources for their dugout canoes, for their firewood, for smoking and cooking. So this area would be very open in a typical village. Acres and acres could be then planted. The first thing you want to start with is your soil. This soil is, as you can see, incredibly black. It's also really broken up. It's not compacted thanks to the earthworms here, but it's nice and rich. They would have mounded their gardens, and they planted three very important plants that worked in harmony with each other. It was corn. Corn is in the grass family. Corn grows up nice and tall. Corn takes a ton of nitrogen out of the soil, so they planted beans around the corn. The corn then supported the climbing beans. You can see some of the climbing beans here. The beans would have climbed up the corn. Beans give nitrogen back to the soil. And then at the base, they would have planted their gourds and their squashes. The gourds were primarily grown for utilitarian purposes. This could be turned into a vessel, a container. It could be turned into a bowl, or it could be turned into a ladle for scooping. The gourds and the squashes shaded out the garden so you didn't lose moisture and you didn't have to weed it as much. One of the jobs of Native American children would have been up on this platform to keep critters out. That's why we have the modern fence, because we're not here 24/7 monitoring our garden. They would have used the Three Sisters, which means they worked in harmony with each other. Beans give nitrogen back to the soil, corn take nitrogen out. All of these plants as well can be stored for months. We can thank Native Americans for about 70% of the plants we eat today. In order to garden from year to year, they would have had to seed save. So here I have this beautiful tray of items that they would have saved the seeds. So we have the corn seeds, we have the Trail of Tear bean seeds, gourd seeds, pumpkin or squash seeds, and then this is a pawpaw seed, which is a variety of like a mango that would have been grown in the Illinois area, not typically in this area, but again, it was a Native American food. So year to year, you'd want to save your seeds. You wouldn't want to use up the whole plant. The tools that would have been used in the garden would have come from, again, nature. This is a deer antlers. Antlers are shed annually, they fall off right around Christmas. And or if they have harvested the deer, they would have then used the antler. It makes a perfect rake in the garden. So that would have been used. They would have traveled to the coast for several reasons. One, to get the resources from the coast, but they also needed different types of shells. They needed seaweed and fish. The seaweed and the fish added nutrients to the soil, because again, that corn uses up a lot of the nutrients in the soil, so you want to amend your soil with that seaweed or fish bodies, and then of course get a surf clam, and your surf clam becomes a really good hoe for making lines in your garden. You can see that really rich soil again. The ends of the posts, as you can see, were burned. The burning preserves the wood. So this post can last. It's also cedar, which is rot resistant, but by burning the ends, so if you want to put in a garden and not use pressure treated, use natural woods, just burn your ends and the termites and the carpenter ants will leave your posts alone.
Hello, my name is Darlene Kasak. I'm a member of the Scaticoat Tribal Nation. I am also the education coordinator here at the museum. I'm going to give you a little bit of the perspective from the Native people as far as land use, Native people have this relationship with the land. We don't believe that we are better or less than any other living thing. In fact, we believe that we're all equal and all related. And with that kind of mindset, you have a different way of looking and interacting with nature. So through careful observation about how they planted different things together, they learned that by planting corn, beans, and squash in mounds, on hills, they thrive so much better. So it's that relationship that they have with the land, that appreciation, that, you know, plants and animals and such can be our teachers. We can learn a lot from them if we just sit back, pay attention, and listen. Now, the way that they passed on this knowledge, this information, this way of knowing was through stories. There were several different ways and stories, depending on where you were from, on how they passed down this unique style of gardening from one generation to the next, and also how they spread the word all across North America. One of the stories is a continuation of Sky Woman's story, where Sky Woman comes from the sky world, falling through a hole in the sky, grabbing onto a tree as she's falling. She has seeds in her hand. When she's falling to the ground, the animals here knew that she needed a soft place to land. So first the birds came in and tried to, break her fall. Then the animals all worked together to dig down to the bottom of the ocean, grab a handful of dirt and put it on the back of a turtle, so that when she finally landed on the back of a turtle, there was dirt there. When she landed, those seeds fell and started to sprout. Now, the continuation of that story is that when she landed, when she fell, she was pregnant with child. When she landed, she gave birth to a daughter. When her daughter grew into a young woman herself, she became pregnant, but she died during childbirth, giving birth to 2 children. But her mother, Sky Woman, wanted to give a gift to those children, a remembrance, a way to always remember their mother. So she buried her mother in the ground, and from that mother's gravesite, from where she was buried, corn, beans, and squash appeared. And those 3 plants helped nourish her children throughout their lives. There's another story that others tell about 3 young women who were out, in their field, out in their garden. One of them was just a little whippersnapper, just crawling on the ground. Another was a girl dressed in yellow who would constantly run off. And another was a very tall, very elegant, light-haired girl. And they were 3 sisters that loved each other, but they could not be any farther apart in personalities. Well, one day, a young boy comes, and they watch this young boy, and they're interested and fascinated with what this young boy is doing. That night, that youngest creepy crawler child disappeared. The other 2 daughters were very sad. A little while later, the boy appeared again, this time grabbing reeds from near the water. They were fascinated with him again. And that night, that daughter dressed in yellow, the one who always ran away, she disappeared too. So that left just the tall, elegant, light-haired daughter in the garden. And she was very sad, but she would not let her head bow down. But she was very sad that she lost her 2 sisters. That young boy appeared again, and when he saw how sad that young woman was, he decided to bring her with him. And when she went with him, she found her 2 other sisters were living in his village. And they were very happy and very taken very good care of. And this is a story about how those 3 sisters were united. The youngest of the children, the creepy crawly ones, was the beans. The one dressed in yellow, the one that would run off in all different directions, that was squash. And the tall, light-haired colored daughter was the corn. And this is how they helped children remember those 3 different sisters and how different they were, but when they were united, how strong they were. And this is another way that they carried on that tradition. of the Three Sisters garden. And when they gardened, things were used to its fullest. Nothing was wasted. Today, when we grow corn, we just take the corn, we shuck the husks off the corn, throw it away, eat the corn, throw the cob away. They would use every single bit of it. They would use the corn husks. They would use corn husks to make dolls, to weave baskets, to weave rugs, to weave moccasins. Every part of that plant was used. It wasn't just carelessly thrown away. Even the used up corn cobs were used as either a plug for a canteen or a plug for a basket, or a dart or fire starters. They had different ways of using different things. Nothing was just carelessly thrown away. One thing that, as an educator here at the museum, I've noticed with children is they're very disconnected from the land. They don't realize where things come from. So I think it's important that we teach our children to appreciate the gifts of the land, to appreciate the things that we receive from Mother Earth. Robin Kimmerer talks about this in great detail in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass. If we teach children where things come from, maybe they'll appreciate those gifts that they've been given. For example, a basket. It takes 30 years of a tree's life to make a basket. And when you think about a basket in that way, you're not going to be as careless with it. You're not going to leave it outside to let it rot. We try to connect the children back to the earth with asking them where things like paper come from. Where do their leather shoes come from? Where do pencils come from? You know, if they see the things that they use every single day and connect it to Mother Nature, and they realize that it's a gift that they're given, they might not be so frivolous and careless with those items.